Let me introduce our panelists. To my far right is Betsy Beise, Associate Provost for Academic Planning Programs. Next to Betsy is Gary White, Associate Dean for Public Services here at the library, and we thank the library for hosting this. Next to Gary is Miss Allison Robinson. If you've not met Allison, you should make it a point today to meet her. She hasn't been on campus all that long, but she's already having impacts. Allison is Chief Deputy Information Officer, Division of IT, DIT, Division of Information Technology. She focuses on instructional design and course support, among other things, but that's a pretty big one. We work pretty closely with that group. Next to her is Cheryl and Juba. Cheryl is also from DIT, and she's in the division, she's actually, if I have this correctly, she's an engineer, but she is the person who is going to, I think, share some experiences of taking actually Coursera courses. And to balance that out and to be fair, we have James Green, and James is Director of Entrepreneurship Education at Mtech, and he has finished his first Coursera course, and in a couple of weeks you're launching it again, right? What I'm going to do at this point is be quiet, sit down, turn on the timer, and turn this over to Betsy Beise.
Introduction. So I think my job is to tell you something like, how in the world did we get here a year later into this space of MOOCs, and why are we doing it? Why is the university engaged? So if you can think back a little bit, about a year ago, I know what I was doing about a year ago. I was deeply embedded in trying to design our new classroom building. And we were having lots and lots of debates about, should we have just straight theater seating? Should we try to do collaborative seating? How are we going to make the best face-to-face experience for our students? And then all of a sudden, this disruption occurred, which was the launch of Coursera, which I think was in June, if I remember. We were doing this last May, right around then. And all of this information in the media about online courses for free with hundreds of thousands of students enrolled. And then the obvious question is, why do we need a classroom? So, so that was the first thing we started thinking about. By about mid-August, I think, the other major event that had taken place last June, if you recall, was the firing of the University of Virginia's president over ostensibly about the issue of not moving fast enough in this new world of education by the board of visitors. So that was the landscape that we were in right around the time that MOOCs became a very hot topic in the media. Apart from that, I think President Lowe saw an opportunity, perhaps, started thinking about, well, we're moving into a new world of learning, teaching and learning. Maybe we need to learn something about this movement that's taking place. Maybe we should think about participating. And this, again, was in August, outside of the semester time, not very many people around on campus. We had to make a decision quietly, because these things are always associated with a non-disclosure agreement and a press conference and all this kind of thing. So, so we jumped at first into the swimming pool. And we had to immediately select a suite of courses to offer as part of the launching of this. Nobody had any idea what the financial model was for getting involved. Nobody had any idea where this was headed. I think we still have a lot of uncertainty about where this is headed. But in the end, 9 months later now, at least with the little bit that I've learned about this, I think this was a very good decision on our part to start experimenting in this space. Concurrent with our joining Coursera, then Provost Wiley launched a commission on blended and online education with wide campus participation, not only faculty but deans, Division of IT staff, folks who had taught online courses, folks who had not, to try to understand what this MOOC space has to do with our face-to-face instruction. Are there connections? Where should we be headed as a campus in terms of providing the best educational experience for our students? So the commission in blended and online education, Jane Clark, the Dean of the School of Public Health, chaired it because the School of Public Health actually is pretty far out in front on our campus in terms of delivering blended instruction. I think the commission over this past year then began to realize that the conversation is really about not how do we deliver online education, but how do students learn and how can we use technology to improve that experience. And the Coursera platform is providing a number of avenues for us to explore that. Concurrent with that, the Senate Education Affairs Committee was given a charge to debate whether or not our campus should be engaged in this online course offerings for free, not for credit, and if so, how. And after a significant work on their part, looking at what our peers are doing, looking at what the benefits might be, what the costs might be, they again enthusiastically decided that this is a good thing for us to continue to experiment in. So we have launched 5 courses, and you'll hear from James Green, who has offered one and is about to offer the second offering of it. And you'll hear from Cheryl, who's taken many, it sounds like. So I think that'll be the most interesting part of this conversation. So here we are today. We're getting close to launching another call for proposals for a number of Coursera MOOCs. We're also starting as a campus. I think various people are starting to explore other possibilities for delivering MOOCs outside of the Coursera platform. So we don't know where this is going. We still don't know what the financial model is, and maybe we will a year from now. It's hard to say. I just want to say one other thing. One of the recommendations that came out of both the Blended and Online Commission and the Senate Ed Affairs Committee is that we need a campus leader to help us, shepherd us through this process. And we're a very distributed campus. I don't think we know exactly what that office is going to look like yet, but we have, the Provost has now appointed Ben Peterson, who's a professor of computer science, to be, and I have to look at his title here, special advisor to the Provost on technology and educational transformation. So again, this is not just MOOCs, it's blended learning, it's online instruction, it's how do we do the best for our students in this environment.
Thank you, Betsy. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. I'm going to keep people on time. Is there somebody who has a question for Betsy? Looks like my class. There'll be lots of time. I'm going to turn this over to Jim Green, and I'll get your slides up.
All right. So we were, by some estimates, the guinea pig for this. We started our course back in January, and this was based on us putting our hand up in the fall, being willing to make a go of offering Coursera course and innovation entrepreneurship. This is an area that we teach within our unit of Mtech in the Clark School of Engineering, and this was a course that was largely based on an I-Series course that I've been teaching for a few years. So in that way, it was content that we knew well, and it was also an area that we thought would resonate with students in that intersection of innovation, entrepreneurship, and really focusing on what are the things that you do before you get to writing a business plan. We constructed our course over a 6-week model. We had approximately 90 minutes of content per week that we developed, and that was done through a series of 8 to 12-minute videos. The types of content that we covered is highlighted here. And so the orientation of this was not to start a business, but to get familiar and develop some skills in entrepreneurial mindset and an opportunity analysis as related, again, to all the things that happen before you start that business. So in that way, there are elements of engineering business, but there are also a lot of elements of psychology and sociology and other things we do within our I-Series course to get students acquainted with the various topics that were associated with our course content. And so the way that we did that was we structured our course very much like you would structure a typical course. The Coursera model does move as a cohort. So there is a schedule, there are assignments, and things are due on that schedule. There are grades associated with that. And so what we did was we constructed something that we thought made sense based on our face-to-face experience. And what you see here is a 6-week series. And each of the small bullets within each column represents a lecture. So we had approximately 35 lectures of 8 to 12 minutes that were recorded. And then there was an assignment due at the end of each week for each week's content. These were done initially serving 87,000 students. And so all of these are either auto-graded or they are peer-graded, meaning there's a model by which students can grade one another, all working with some rubrics that we had designed and developed. One measure that we wanted to use is to see how the course eval shook out versus the same course eval measures that we're all familiar with for our face-to-face offerings. And what we found in large part by the students that did the eval, which was not all, but which was many, is it didn't differ a whole lot from our face-to-face offerings of these courses. Now there were a few elements, such as on the far right-hand side, that the atmosphere was a laggard, and thankfully that score is a little bit lower than it is within our face-to-face, but when you look more so to the left-hand side, preparedness and guidelines, effectiveness, learning, instruction, etc., overall the students were telling us that they got something out of the course. And what we also did was a tool that we use within our existing courses on the impact that we're making on entrepreneurial mindset. We do a longitudinal survey within our programs. And typically over a 2-year frame, we may have as much as a 15% improvement in this measure. And what we found here is that in only 6 weeks, we had about a 3.5% improvement. So it gives us some inclination too that not only are the students feeling like they've gotten something out of it with course evals, not only are a fair number of them actually passing the course by grade, but we're also having some of the intended impact that we have on their mindset. So there are a variety of things that you can do, naturally depending on your discipline, when you've got such a big group to work with, of trying out new methods and trying out new pedagogies, and you really have a sample set that certainly I'll never see in my lifetime of these 80-some thousand face-to-face. And you have, again, the opportunity to do that in a very concentrated time frame. Many of the Coursera courses are 6 to 12 weeks in length. So they also typically move outside of the normal academic schedule. So they may launch in February, they may launch in October. It's really up to the university and faculty to find out what works for them in that measure. That one, there we go. So we thought a word cloud was appropriate for anything involving innovation. And what you see here is a number of things that bubble up. Think, good, time, think, learn, helpful. So in the free responses that about 5,000 of the students wrote within their surveys, we're seeing and hearing good things about them as well. So our key takeaways is, one, it's just interesting. This is my second 2-hour meeting today talking about Coursera. So in that way, there's a lot of interest on campus. There's a lot of interest nationally. In the Chronicle, almost every day, there's something about MOOCs. We went to a conference, several of us up in Penn in early April, and there were, I think, in the order of 400 people in attendance. And it was the first time I'd really seen so many presidents and provosts and chancellors in the same place at the same time. So it is certainly an area that's interesting, that's rewarding, that was educational for us as well. We've been teaching online for about 5 years, but this is certainly a new and different way of doing that to a different set of students. And what we also found some satisfaction is that it was effective by our measure of looking at the goals that we had for the course. We had 4,800 students that passed, and passing that they took the assessments and scored well. We had a higher number, something in the order of 6,000, in addition to that watched all the videos. So they essentially completed the course, albeit they chose not to do any assessments. So our definition of passing and our definition of what are we expecting of students differs a bit than a tuition-based course where hopefully they're taking their assignments and they intend to pass. This is a model that many students are doing it to learn, in addition to passing. We also were able to take away a number of things to integrate within our other online and other face-to-face courses. So we do offer a number of online courses within our department in entrepreneurship and innovation. We've changed our thinking on the way to structure some of them. We've certainly adopted this mini lecture format of the 8 to 12 minute as opposed to the 75 minute that we've done historically. We've also began to experiment more with doing online assessments within the Canvas environment. and are doing more of the flipped classroom elements as well, all influenced by this Coursera experience. So for the last slide, we often get the questions of why do such a thing? And for us, it was an opportunity in innovation and education and online that attracted us as simply a learning opportunity. I believe we agreed to do it before we knew if there was compensation or what the compensation was. We felt that it would certainly help us in a 4-credit offering of expanding and enhancing our online things that we were doing for our existing University of Maryland students. It also, in our mind, gave us the opportunity to think about some new things we could do to improve access to our courses for credit, as well as to do some new and interesting things with some international partners, leveraging some learnings that we were taking away from Coursera. So in that context, what it did for us in just a single offering that we've done so far is it provided some video lecture content and know-how that we could integrate into our credit-based courses. It also gave us the opportunity to potentially recruit some students to the university. So by percentage, the high school population was relatively small, but again, it's small percentages of quite large numbers. So if we could secure another 20 or 30 students a year that were entrepreneurship all-stars to come to Maryland, we would consider that a success as well. What it's also given us some thoughts on doing is, could we create something of a mini MOOC, meaning maybe it's hundreds but not thousands, that could be credit-based, that could be University of Maryland students, that you may be able to do with few, if any, TAs, but still serve a significant number of students by having some highly automated assessments. So that's something we're thinking about experimenting with in the spring. But again, I think for every faculty, they have different ideas and thoughts on what the takeaways can be, what they can learn, and how they might be able to apply them, both within the Coursera environment as well as within your other online or even face-to-face classrooms.
Again, we have time for a couple of questions for Jim. Somebody has one.
It's going to sweep this way.
I'll take one from this.
Okay, I'll let you pick up.
I'm just interested more in the assessment
Yes.
tools.
Yep. So Coursera assessments happen in a few ways. The most significant way, or the most common way, is automated. So it's true, false, it's multiple choice, it's keyword matching, it's did they get the right number, does their spreadsheet cell B6 match up with your key cell B6? So again, it's all the things that you can do that are highly automated. Similar to Canvas, maybe a little bit better than Canvas by some measures. The other element that's tricky is peer grading, meaning that the 4 of you submit a paper, I collect the papers, I distribute it to these 4. They grade it, I take that average, and I give it back to you. So that certainly requires some thought regarding rubrics and how do you train for that. It took me more time to build out the assessments, and me being one of my colleagues, Lisa Cohen-Sherman is here as well, we probably spent more time building out the assessments than we did doing the video lecture content. So it's tricky to build something that you normally do human in an automated fashion to do it well.
I was wondering, you mentioned the students who completed. How many students started off?
Yeah. So what we saw is that we had 87,900 enrollments at our peak. Half of those never come back. So they were interested enough to click the button, which requires you to submit your email. So again, all free. We don't need your name, address, zip code, anything. We just need an email and you're in. So we started with the 87,900 that had enrolled, and about half of them came back to watch the first lecture. So call that 45,000. Half of those came back for week 2. So call that 22,000. And then it began to trickle down a little bit. Week-on-week retention was probably about 80% after you got past the first week. But we ended with about 10,000 that were still watching lectures at the end, with nominally half of them doing and passing the assessments and getting their statement of accomplishment.
Okay, what I'm going to do is move. We want to move through, and we'll come back. There'll be lots of times for those of you who didn't ask questions. Just write them down and memorize them. We'll come back. Our next speaker is Cheryl Ann, and I guess we get to see this from the other side.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Ann Juba. I'm working for the Division of Information Technology, and I am an avid Coursera student. I didn't think I'd pick up this many classes, but I started last year with 1, which turned into 3. I've completed 3 classes so far. I'm enrolled in 4, and I've probably got a list of 20 that I'd love to take if I have the time, if I ever have the time. I've obtained 1 certificate. I dropped out of 1 class completely because about week 5, the video quality got so poor that I couldn't continue.
Could you speak more directly?
Sure, in the microphone. Is that better? Yeah. So I dropped 1 class because the quality of the video was so poor, and I just probably what we'd call audited another class. I was very interested in the material. I did not submit any of the assignments because it required you installing some software on your computer that I couldn't get to work. So I think the range of topics in Coursera that can be taught effectively depends on many things. Programming classes, IT classes that I've taken are better with a consistent user interface, like the Python class that I'm taking now that controls the environment where you can submit the assignments in a consistent way. So I think the results of the student outcomes is going to depend on A, the topic, and B, the tools that you can give them to learn online. Learning online is very different than learning in the classroom. I completed the last 30 credits of my bachelor's degree online, and in between going back to get my master's degree, I decided to pick up Coursera. So, and I haven't put it down since. I've kind of given up television, and I come home and I watch Coursera videos, and I have a favorite class that I sit down every Saturday morning and watch. It's become that enthralling for me. So what is very interesting about being a Coursera student is the number of people in the class. One of my classes has an age range of 10 to 92. A third of the people are in the U.S., 2/3 are outside the U.S. But the most interesting thing to me is that 70% of the people in this class actually have a bachelor's degree or higher. So your student isn't, your typical 18-year-old going into college for the first time. It's people that have gone to college, graduated, and are interested in these topics as a continuing education / entertainment / learning experience versus I need to get my bachelor's degree to get this job. So what was a typical student of 18 to 22 and in the Coursera land is not your typical student. It's sometimes older people, younger people, but the typical age range, the highest age range is the 26 to 32-year-old in the classes that I found. So in traditional online classes, it's been on video lectures, you buy a book, you participate in discussion forums, you take tests. The MOOCs seem to be more video-oriented, automated assessments, peer assessments, and discussions with the 40,000 other people that are in your class, which kind of becomes unwieldy, but some of the instructors have found better ways to manage the discussion forums as the courses have evolved. So I finish up 4 classes in the next 2 weeks, and hopefully I'll be earning a certificate in all of those 4 classes. And the next month I've got 3 more starting, so I intend to keep going with it. And a lot of people are like me, actually, in the Coursera world. There's you can look at other people's profiles in Coursera and what they're doing and what classes they're signed up for, what country they're from, how old they are. And most of the students I've looked at have 3 to 10 classes or more. that they have clicked on and are interested in or are actively taking. So I'll take some questions if anybody has it.
I'd like to follow up on your comment about you dropped the class because of the quality of the video. What were your expectations of the video?
This class, it was a 12-week class, and I got through week 4, and my expectations of the video were kind of low, I guess, in the beginning, because of my previous experience with online classes. They kind of look like telecourses. You got a teacher up front and a bunch of students, and you listen to a lecture for an hour. Coursera breaks the lectures down into 10 to 15-minute, 20-minute chunks sometimes. The video quality issue that I had in the class that I dropped is, first of all, the background was so plain. I mean, it was a guy in an empty office shooting a video of himself. And he was very interesting. The topic was so fascinating. I really wanted to go on, but every time he did this, to point, the camera would refocus. and I'm like, okay, I'll try and listen to it, and I won't watch it, because I just, every like 30 seconds it would be like, and it was about truth tables and logic, and you just cannot get that from listening. You have to watch it, and you have to look at what's on the screen. And I tried really hard, and I couldn't do it. On the other hand, one of the classes from University of Virginia called Know Thyself, I don't know if any of you have taken a look at that. The video quality in that is fantastic. And then it's not just the video quality, it's the background that the professor chose to talk about Socrates, and he's in a little amphitheater, or he's talking about some other philosopher and he's in the library, or he's talking about Zen and he's in a garden, So I never really thought about that much when I was taking online classes, but it really, really makes a difference to the student. What's going on in the background, the engagement of the eye contact with the camera. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, one question here.
Let's talk about the learning aspect. I'm David from mechanical engineering. So at what level do you think you actually got the material, mastered it, was good at it, could execute with it? It altered kind of how you perceive the world. And James, if you wanted to go after that also a little bit with your assessment. In other words, you may have said it earlier, the issue isn't part of the issue is delivery, right? Putting me in front of a video was just, we could test how many people I could put asleep within 5 minutes. Well, no, because I yelled in 5 minutes. But that's a different issue, never mind. It's all classroom technique. The question is at what level what level of learning occurs from knowing the material to being able to use the material to being able to think from the material, and how was that experience for you in that environment?
The one class that I have obtained a certificate in was personal financial planning from the UC Irvine. And I was able to put the material I learned from week 1 to week 8 to work right away in my life. I mean, that class was fantastic. And the class that I audited, which was computational investing, which is about writing performance algorithms for your security portfolio of stocks. Very interesting. I'd love to be able to be a portfolio algorithm writer in some part of my future life. I think it would be a fun job. I got a lot out of it. I did not submit any assignments for that class. So the other one I wish I could have gotten more out of if the video had been better, because I'd like to retake the class at some point in time. But every class I've taken, I have gotten something out of that has been meaningful to me.
We have time for one last one.
Since you've taken a lot of courses, do you have any ideas about what subjects lend themselves more to this this format, or what subjects lend themselves worse to it, or is there no difference?
For me, because I've already got a degree, I'm interested in all the things I couldn't take in school, that were the fun classes, like philosophy and computational investing, and that weren't required. I think those lend themselves to being good Coursera classes. I'm enrolled in Dr. Lucas's Surviving Disruptive Technologies. I think that's very relevant to the particular business I'm in. IT is very disruptive to not only you guys, but to us as well. I mean, implementing new technology. So those types of ongoing kind of continuing education classes, but they're teaching, you know, analytical chemistry, pre-calculus, calculus, programming. I mean, I'm not particularly interested in those, but I could see how people outside the country without physical access, people that are handicapped, people that just can't come to the location would be extremely interested in the regular, normal college level topics.
We're going to move on, but before we do, I have a question for all of you, and that is, how many of you have taken a MOOC? Hands up. Hi. Okay. Our next speaker is Gary White, and I'm going to turn it over to Gary now.
Good afternoon. Everybody hear me okay?
I think it's a little weak. I think that one's weak.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Spencer, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. One comment before I start. I'm talking about the role of libraries and librarians in the MOOC initiative, and I have to say, as with every new initiative, I think your librarians, research librarians, are the first to really step forward and jump up and volunteer and see what they can do to help with any major initiative on campus. And I've seen that with this as well. So I just want to thank the librarians who have devoted time and energy to seeing what we can do to support MOOCs on campus. So thinking about the role of the research library, I think in many ways it's really a lot of the same things we do in the traditional sense, but in this new context. We have subject librarians who work very closely with our faculty to develop courses, make sure resources are available, develop assessment tools, etc., and to provide research and teaching support services for courses. But again, in this new MOOC environment, which creates some challenges. So one of our goals is, as each new course rolls out, is that we will match up at least one of our subject librarians with each MOOC course. And so we're working with Betsy's office as these courses are developed. And with the existing courses, we have done this. We've matched up an appropriate subject librarian with each of our MOOC faculty members. And the librarians can really assist with a lot of things. Again, as many of the things that they traditionally do, helping to develop the course, develop assessment outcome measures, particularly around information literacy. One of them, I think, a role that takes more importance in the MOOC environment is to help identify the course materials and navigating the copyright environment in selecting and making resources available. And then again, providing ongoing support for the students in the course. So one of the challenges, I think, again, and I think we've seen this from the faculty who are developing the courses, is really coming up and identifying the resources that they are legally allowed to make available to the students taking a MOOC course. And as you know, these are students from all over the world, so we are not able to offer our traditional library databases, our subscription journal packages, et cetera, because according to our license agreements, those are for just University of Maryland faculty, staff, and students. So what we've done to help address this is to develop a resource guide of open educational resources. And I don't want to take credit for this because the work of this guide really came to a couple of librarians in the room. I think they're in the room. Terry Owen, who is our copyright librarian, Karen Patterson, and Cynthia Ippoliti all worked to develop this course. So thank you very much. And we're hoping that this will be really a first stop for faculty that are looking at developing new courses for MOOCs. And it's a really great guide. There's a handout of the presentation on the back table that has the URL for this and a few other URLs. So essentially, it's not just for MOOCs, it's really a guide to open access and open educational resources that can be used for MOOCs, and also more broadly to support the open access movement that we're hoping to push forward. So just a quick overview of the page itself. It's a little hard to see on the overhead, but a quick guide to open access, some of the issues about what open access means. We have a tab specifically for MOOCs, and this is the one I would ask you to take a look at. There's a really great, up in the upper left, there's a copyright section that is a really great overview of the copyright issues as related to the MOOC environment. So lots of guidelines for how you can incorporate, what kinds of materials you can incorporate. It addresses print materials, images, audio, video materials, etc. And really gives a nice framework and some guidance for faculty who are putting together a course in the MOOC environment. And let me get back to the top. And the other thing is, here. And the other tab, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this today, is for educators. And this tab is where the libraries are trying to keep a current comprehensive list of the various open access repositories that are available. There are a lot, many of you probably know there are a lot of open access initiatives, open textbook initiatives going on, and we're attempting to just keep up with those and provide links to these materials. So if you're a faculty member who is, whether it's for a MOOC or for your own course, if you are interested in looking and seeing if there's a textbook that you might be able to use, this is the place to go and look through the resources that are available. And so, and finally there's a few other links, and then we also have a link to all of our library liaisons. And again, I would say for any faculty member that is developing a course or thinking about developing a MOOC course, the first person I would recommend is contacting your subject librarian who can help you with the navigation of the resources that you might need for your course. Okay. And I'm going to give I'm going to use one example from the existing courses, and I hope she doesn't mind because she's sitting in the audience today. But one of our courses, one of the current MOOC courses is Dr. Elsa Brown's Civil Rights, Women in the Civil Rights Movement course. And one of our humanities librarians, Yelena Luckert, has been working with Dr. Brown on this course. And so she spent a great deal of time helping to identify materials, helping to navigate some of those copyright questions and figuring out what kinds of materials could be used in the course. But I think one of the innovative things that Yelena has done is to embed herself into the course itself as a librarian. So she and Elsa have set up one of the forums within the Coursera course called the Librarian Forum. And this is a place where students in the course can come and ask questions. They can ask Yelena questions about resources or research or really anything related to anything that a librarian would typically address. And Yelena and her colleagues help to monitor this forum and answer questions directly through, so really as a partner in the course itself. She's also planning to actually film and take part and offer a video segment as part of the course, so having a librarian who films themselves describing how to do research within a subject discipline. Some of the other things that are being talked about and implemented here and at other universities are using our existing course research guides or developing special course research guides for MOOC courses, offering our online reference or research assistance, which we offer through chat service, email, etc., which we can easily offer and link those to the courses. Integrating our existing tools and tutorials. There are a huge array of these available in libraries, everything from information literacy to using bibliographic citation tools, etc. One of the novel ideas that's being talked about, and this really hasn't come to fruition yet, but if you take a Coursera course, I think you'll see there often in the courses, the students in geographic regions will still try to find ways to meet up with each other in a physical environment and get together. And I was enrolled in a Coursera course myself, and so the students around Washington, Baltimore were figuring out places they could meet and get together. So it's still kind of interesting that this face-to-face is still important and an important component for people. But really, I think what we're going to try to do is figure out a way that we can integrate into the courses and advertise that the research library is a place that we could offer for these students to come together as a group and work collaboratively and use the library as the face-to-face environment rather than a Starbucks or something. Am I running out of time? Okay, just real quick then. I'll jump forward, and I just want to point out that I have a couple of resources that I think would be useful to faculty, and again, the handouts are on the back table, but one is the Association of Research Libraries has put out a legal brief, a research brief called MOOCs, Legal and Policy Issues for Research Libraries, which outlines the copyright and fair use issues around providing resources in the MOOC environment. There was a conference in March put out by OCLC on MOOCs and libraries, which has a lot of good ideas. And then finally, this is not a new guide, but the ARL Code of Best Practices and Fair Use for Academic and Research Libraries is something that's very useful that I turn to when I get questions about copyright or fair use. So thank you very much.
We have time for a couple of questions.
So in your discussion of open educational resources, you showed places we could go to get educational resources, but what if we're developing textbooks or materials that we would like to have as open educational resources? Do you provide ways, servers and places to put it and help in getting our materials into such an environment?
Well, we do have I would recommend that you use our institutional repository drum, which is on the main page of that guide. You'll see Terry Owen's picture, and he's the person who runs our digital repository, and that's what I would recommend. And I think that's what's happening at other institutions where there are initiatives to help give resources to faculty to develop their own course materials. A lot of institutions are implementing incentive grants and small grants, one-time seed money to help give faculty resources, maybe a graduate student to help them pull together an open textbook. And then, but the correlate of that is that you put it into the institutional repository and then it's available to users through that mechanism. So we can put it into our institutional repository and make it available.
Do you have help with the user interface?
Well, I will defer that
to
hold Terry. I would say you can contact Terry Owen, who's on the whose contact is on that link.
So we're going to remember there will be lots of times for questions. So we're going to move to our next speaker, who's Allison Robinson.
So it was perfect sequencing for me to follow Gary because I attended the Coursera Partner Conference as well, and I attended a session on copyright because, as you can imagine, that's a pretty complicated issue, and you're very public-facing, so you want to make sure you get it right. And the person that was sharing their experience said that they had gone to a website. The school that she worked with was interested in purchasing, finding out what it would cost to purchase material to be able to include it in the course without a cost to students, because there can't be a charge for students to have to get the content. And so she went to the website, and following right along the numbers that Dr. Green reported, they anticipated they had about 50,000 people in the class, and they requested a copyright number of 23,000. The website returned, please enter a valid number. So we are not the only ones experiencing a disruptive technology here. So this did come out of, I'll try and stand still, I'm sorry. This did come out of nowhere. I started at the University of Maryland the end of July, and on Monday I was trying to figure out parking and where the soda machine was, and had never heard of Coursera. And by Friday I was responsible for 5 courses, supporting 5 Coursera courses on the campus. So it moved very quickly. We saw class sizes, like described here, of 87,000, because one thing that really helped was it's very interesting content. No doubt, it attracted a lot of people. There were plenty of things to choose from. but the pool of courses available too were very small. So we're starting to see those numbers normalize a little bit. Our smallest class is 14,000, and our largest, of course, was the 87,000 person class. So my group of people that support this, my boss did a presentation on this, and he put up a picture of Mick Jagger and this guy. And this guy tunes Mick Jagger's guitar. So our faculty are Mick Jaggers. We tune the guitar. We're there to support them however they need to do their course. And we work individually with faculty on how they want to use us to be able to develop their course material. We also learn with them. We approach this with a mentality of we're going to learn what we're learning, because really we just haven't, no one's been there in this volume. So we just kept that attitude, and it just let your mind be open, and we just need to figure out the next thing. So that was very early on, and as we've gone, we've had courses start and complete. We have our second course starting. We had a course that opened for the first time last week, Monday. So, and all of these 5 courses have been running at different times. I believe 2 of them started at the same time. So everybody's in a little different position. So James really was out in front of the front, and his experience and his ability to take the statistics that he can get access to and synthesize and share that information, I think really has helped all of us to turn that around and see where we can help make a difference. And so we were just aiming to get some videos done by Labor Day weekend and introduce the courses. And this last course now, much of the video production occurred in front of a green screen. There's production value with it. We've talked about should we engage journalism, theater to help with that presentation style. I was in favor of theater, but then we suggested maybe journalism was a better approach. If somebody wanted that as a support structure for their course, then we'd have that set up and be able to pull in the resources, because a good deal of supporting this is also making those connections to resources. We didn't have a video studio per se when this started. We're working on creating that space and partnering with the library on that. But university relations allowed us to use their space and be able to create these videos if that's what a faculty member chose. If a faculty member wanted a high-quality video camera in their classroom, that's what we provided for them. So we really did try to meet people where they needed, and their departments were also very supportive to many of the faculty in giving them extra resources to be able to do this. But the approach to this is very different from a typical course. First and foremost, in whatever you do, you have to remember English as a second language is always there. These are worldwide courses. Coursera does caption video, so that impacts timelines. If you need to have a video done and edit it to your satisfaction, that's not done, then it goes for captioning, and there's multiple languages that they caption in now. So the timelines were very different, and we learned that we had to address these. Coursera started with the recommendation that you have 2 weeks of course content in the can when you start a course, and always stay 2 weeks ahead. They've already changed it by saying, have it all in the can before you start the course. That's their recommendation now. Now, why that had to change is first and foremost, it was such a rapid development at the beginning. We just hit the ground running and worked to get these courses out. In 2 weeks, to say have it in the can, it wasn't even possible. I don't believe the timeline would have facilitated that at all. But now that there are more course offerings and a lot more content there and a little more lead time for these things, they're recommending that you have it all done before. And again, that's according to what the faculty needs is what we do. We don't tell them, we support them how they need. The process has been changing. The interface is not is it fair to say not the easiest interface to use? There's some, so you can make a choice in a true and false quiz that if you choose a certain way, true and false will both be right, or they will both be wrong. And that makes for some interesting results. So things like submitting your quiz, a little lead time on that too, so some extra eyes can take a look at it and make sure that it's correct. It actually, your courses, you actually have enough people participating that you can determine statistical significance on the people answering the question. If you have 40,000 people who start out and take a quiz, remember in college, I swear that question 3 was not fair, that is not what well, you can statistically see if consistently your class is not doing the question right because your population sample is large enough in some of these courses. So Coursera is taking the time to learn about what we're learning as well. They're conducting A/B tests. Daphne explained a course they had where some of the people taking the course did not see the video of the talking head, and some did. She said, do you want to know the results? And of course, everyone did. And she said, well, I can't tell you. So many people that didn't have the talking head complained that we had to stop. So we're getting information about learning through this process and the data that can be collected because of people learning at such numbers. But we are, as we are going, we're including more technologies in the things we're doing. You might have heard of the Coursera. They used to get Google technology that just really was not a match for the number of people that were working on it, and the situation crashed and not good. So we like to know if somebody's trying to use a new technology in their course and make sure that how we use it is appropriate to the number of students that are going to be participating, or that we structure how it's used to be appropriate for the number of people. Hank Lucas had a course on disruptive technology or disruptive innovations, and he used Google Hangouts, and his approach for that was to invite 10 students who were active in the discussion boards, to which he said about 6 agreed to be there, which means 4 will show up. And that's where he likes to keep it, about 4 and 6 in himself, discussing this. And it streams out to YouTube so people can watch it, and there can be discussions around it. And so it's a technology that would scale. How could you have that many people talking at one time, or talking heads at one time, but scale it, structure it so it is appropriate for what's trying to be accomplished. So we are looking at different technologies. We're looking at increasing the production value so it is engaging and it is entertaining. Not edutaining, but it is to a certain level to keep a person engaged. And that's something we're really looking at right now. And a new introduction, you had mentioned certificates. There's certificates of completion that you did do the work, that you finished the course. And if you attained a certain level of achievement, you get a certificate that says you achieved this. They are now offering something called a signature track, where for a dollar amount, a low dollar amount, approximately $49, I've seen pretty consistently, you can have a valid ID and a webcam and validate that you are that person. You take a typing test, because apparently typing is a unique little snowflake. We all have our own little typing patterns. And so there's a level of validity that you're the one doing the work. And if you complete, then you actually get a certificate that has saying that you were you and you did this work at this performance. That's one thing we're seeing coming as of late on the Coursera.
We're going to take a couple of questions for Alice, and then I'm going to open it up for questions for anyone who's on the panel. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take probably 15 or 20 minutes, depending on the number of questions, and open it up for questions to the panel. The panel is not done. I actually am holding 2 really special questions for the panel for the end. But so now it's opened up for just general questions for anybody on the panel.
So this was going to be for Cheryl, but I think Gary alluded to it as well. One of the neat things about MOOCs is that there's potential to develop these learning nodes, peers group together, and you have kind of a social learning moment. Did you see that happening in the courses that you took? Did you, like Gary, you mentioned you got together with a few people from DC. Oh, you did?
I did not get together, but it was
so
part
that's what
of
I'm wondering. That seems to be in the literature, a big part of it, those learning nodes. But I'm guessing that a lot of people actually do this individually. Is that what you experienced when you were taking your MOOCs?
I kind of worked on my own through most of it. I looked up a couple of meetups for MOOCs, and I live in Anne Arundel County, so there weren't really any near me to go to. But downtown DC and Alexandria, I mean, they're happening almost on a daily basis for people in the Coursera environment. I have not participated.
Not even online? Because there could be online learning.
There are like Google Hangouts and things like that. I tend to not participate in that particular. I think I'm just too old. I don't know. Maybe maybe I'm just tired of technology after working. So.
I believe ELSA has a group that has kind of broken out to Facebook, and they discuss there. We have found that there's situations in countries where there isn't the internet bandwidth, and someone downloads, burns the CD, and shares that way. Get together and go over the data on the one person who has the technology or the bandwidth or the CDs.
This is more of a comment.
And then a question, but it pertains to Gary, your talk about IP and the availability of resources in some classes. I've also taken quite a few classes, but unfortunately I only finished one, and that's the one I'm going to talk about. It was a class on film. Well, this was done from Wesleyan. They didn't provide the films. You had to get them on your own. Well, Netflix has a couple of copies of everything, but with 80,000 people in the class, there wasn't enough for everyone. Fortunately, and I won't name names because I don't remember who they are anyway, there were a lot of enterprising people in this class who took it upon themselves to rip the films and make them available through all sorts of different means. Otherwise, no one, or very few of the people would have been able to actually complete that course. I think perhaps if they offer it again, they may think this through and provide mechanisms for sharing this out. But that was my one experience with copyrighted material.
Other questions or comments here?
I wondered if anybody is seeing this as a kind of a threat to the traditional faculty. You mentioned, Professor Green mentioned that you could dispense with TAs. Why not dispense with most of the faculty? You can call upon a few star faculty members to do a MOOC.
Yeah, I'll make an attempt to answer that. Just to say that the Blended and Online Commission and also the Senate Ed Affairs Committee that have been looking into this had a fair number of conversations with students, and particularly the BOE Commission went to each college and met with a student group. And I think we did a student survey, and it's pretty clear from the students' perspective that this is not the way they want our campus to go wholesale, that the face-to-face interaction, even if you're not lecturing, the face-to-face interaction is critically important. So, you know, I know I can see my colleague in the front row who I know can lecture far, far better than I ever could, but, you know, having the personal interaction is still a very, very important piece.
This is a question for Dr. Beise and a reaction for Ms. Robinson. The question is, or the comment is, that Coursera in particular appears to be very elitist. And I mean that in a pejorative sense. What was the thinking by the campus of why do we want to join that group, and does that go against our public mission? And Ms. Robinson, does the elitist approach of Coursera bother you?
That is a very interesting question. I think that's something that I learned a little bit about by attending the Coursera Partners Conference. Coursera was established by a very small elite group of universities, and then in the round that we came in, a number of other large public universities came in. There do seem to be concerns about brand. You know, if the public flagship puts courses up there, but another community college puts courses out there, how are students going to know the difference between the two? This is not a concern that I subscribe to, and I think only some of the universities involved really subscribe to that. I think we're at the very early stages of where this is going. Coursera is already having conversations with university systems about what they might do. I think they're still just trying to navigate what the space is and what the value added would be for this kind of an organization. We are also, I should just mention, not obligated. One of the reasons we went into Coursera is because the platform existed and it was a fairly low cost entry, in fact, zero cost entry for us to join. As more of these platforms become open source and as we develop our own resources, we may choose to use a different platform or do something that's unique for our campus and serves our own interests.
Do any other panel members want to address that question? It's a really important one.
I mean, I can.
That's a good picture. Yeah.
There is a good talk on TED Talk by Daphne Kohler, one of the co-founders, and she's very much along these lines of being a social entrepreneur and making universities less elite and trying to increase access and trying to enable people that be it geography, be it economics, that aren't going to have the opportunity to study at Maryland or Princeton or what have you. And thereby trying to open up the environment to engage more people in learning. So, I would say that she sees it, at least as she's described it, as being more inclusive than elite.
Question from this side.
Yeah, I had a question about the potential of using MOOC content in blended courses, the kinds that, those of us who teach here actually are teaching now. And I just love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, we do it now.
It's being done.
So, there's absolutely the opportunity, and I think other faculty are doing it as well. Particularly if you are designing a course that in some fashion encompasses elements that you would teach in a face-to-face environment, you're really creating a repository that you can use for your normal face-to-face class. Now, there's some elements because of the schedule of Coursera that might make it a bit tricky, where you may not direct your face-to-face students to go and watch the video on Coursera, but before you post it to Coursera, you are creating a video file that you can host within Canvas or wherever you would like, and you can direct your students to that and embed that within your existing or new credit-based courses. So you are building a data repository that's reusable for whatever purpose you desire.
I think Cheryl Ann really did point to something that's key here, though. Remember, the purpose of Coursera is access to education across the world. And so the questions about what will this mean to faculty now, and are we going to get a superstar in a certain content area? No other faculty shall ever teach there again. We just don't, there's plenty of room in the worldwide market for education. Plenty of room. And it's not the 18 to 22-year-old. We know that some of the most valuable learning that occurs at college occurs outside of the classroom. Parents understand that too and want that for their students. But you can't think you're going to graduate at 22 and retire at 72 and never have to gain knowledge again. I'm in an IT area, and I'm constantly having to go out and figure things out. And actually, to be able to subscribe to a course and just be able to do it that way is really helpful, rather than trying to Google everything to figure things out. So just kind of keep in mind that it isn't necessarily competing with your 18 to 22-year-old. And I think it's a great way to enhance courses, or if you're a graduate student and you're missing a particular area that would really help you get that degree, you can go out and get it, and it can be something that shores up your education if that should be necessary for you as a student.
I have basically a comment and then a question. First of all, I actually think of it in the, this is like the tradition of the public library, where you have free education. You can go in and study whatever you want. And as we move to a more technological library, I just think that this is sort of within that whole tradition, and it's very democratic. But who pays for it? I mean, the point is that the group of students who come on campus actually pay tuition. And public funding for education has been slowly reduced. So what is the incentive? I'm not opposed to it. I think it's great. But for me, I see it as a service, not as a line activity.
Does somebody want to address that?
I guess I'm the one who has to. I think you've got it exactly right, at least from the university's perspective. One might think about this as an investment. And one of the examples that came up in the Senate meeting when we were discussing this was, my sister took a Coursera course that I think Dean Wiseman also took on world music. And it was offered by UPenn. And one of the notable features was the array of graduate students who were highly featured in all of the videos and interacting with all of the students. So from the perspective of professional development for those graduate students, maybe that's a reasonable investment for the campus to make to help those graduate students. So there's an investment. I think learning how to make good videos is another investment that will probably pay off in our 4-credit tuition-based instruction. And then the third one is what you get out of these assessments. When you have a laboratory of large, statistically really significant numbers of students, and you can use those assessments to figure out what's the tricky material, that's something that can feed back into for campus instruction. So there, you know, there are some financial models coming out, like the signature track is one, for example, where there may be a little bit of financial return, probably going to pay for dinner, not much else. But these other things are, you know, a reason for staying engaged in this arena.
I'll make a comment and then we'll pass it here. One of the things I think that we have all come to expect, that there's a certain level of access to the internet, at least in the Western world. I don't pay for my Google account, I don't pay for the email accounts. I pay a lot for my communication connection piece to that. But there's lots of things within that environment that is sitting in the web and the cloud that we expect to have access to without paying directly to them.
Actually, if I could make one more comment about that, just what I heard, some of the things I heard at the Coursera Partner Conference, and I don't know if Daphne Kohler spoke about this at the ITL conference or not, but one of the strategies that Coursera is taking is to work with publishers to give publishers an incentive to provide some amount of their material for free as part of the course, but not all of it. And so from the publisher's perspective, maybe it's a little bit of an advertising, it's a little bit of a hook to get people in, and then people for them it's a way of doing advertising. Hopefully we won't see, you know, flashing advertisings on the Coursera courses.
Yeah. Okay. My question is about redundancy. Everybody has jumped on the bandwagon of Coursera MOOC, so every university can offer classes on the same topic, like chemistry courses. So what would be the incentive of us to duplicate the effort, and how would students choose? Are they going to select a course in chemistry from the University of Maryland or Stanford? So there is a lot of effort involved in that. Are we wasting time because students might prefer to attend courses from other universities? That's my question about redundancy.
Course selection. Stay down, so.
He's putting his hand up.
Yeah. I mean, as I understand it, and there may be people who know more about it than I, is that there is a selection process by Coursera that's motivated to be relatively unredundant.
No.
No?
No.
Coursera. I rescind that.
Yeah.
I'll let you answer.
Zoom. I think the answer is students are going to go to the best one.
Right.
But so we want to offer high quality. But so the campus is has responsibility for the course selection, either through nomination or through some kind of a selection process. And you know, what we're coming to is we want to present a suite of courses that best portray our campus. So high quality, perhaps unique. Maybe some of them won't be so unique, but they'll be high demand. I think it's going to be a whole mix. You know, the numbers are growing so rapidly. I don't really know that we know the answer to this yet.
I just think it'll be interesting. I think, you know, it is reputational, and I think it will be, you know, in our internet environment where we can evaluate everything under the sun, and there's a social aspect to, you know, the Yelp-like. I think, you know, we'll see that really, I think, taking hold where people can freely evaluate courses and make those opinions publicly available, and people, so I think it'll sort of sort itself out, but I think, again, I think it's a reputational reason that, you know, that institutions want to get in there and get their face known, and get, you know, be on the same playing field as the elite universities, et cetera.
Cheryl Ann said she received a certificate in personal finance, and Allison said that you can shore up your degree, but can you actually obtain a full bachelor's or master's from Coursera? And if so, can you create your own degree, your own program? And if you can, where is your degree from? If all these schools are participating, do you have a master's from Coursera, or do you have it from the various schools that you took classes from?
From my experience in getting finishing my bachelor's degree online, there was a requirement to take, I think it was 18 credits at the university that I was going to graduate from, and then the remaining credits could be taken anywhere. I believe that Coursera is trying to work out something where you can pay to take like a CLEP test to get the credits. I don't know where that's at. I know that there's one place accepting test credits, but that's still kind of up in the air. So I think I don't know what the University of Maryland's policy on that is. So
I should point out that this is a very rapidly moving field. You can watch the Chronicle every day. It changes. Not very long ago, there was a bill before the legislature of the state of California to establish a new university, which will be virtual on this piece. So I think the answer is we have no idea, and ask me in 6 months on that piece. There will probably, I think there's a demand for it. I think the idea that there will be opportunities for getting credit at universities will appear in a very short period of time, but that exists now in many other forms as well currently. The other comment I want to make, and I'll go back, is the idea of crowdsourcing. And I remind everybody that for the courses you teach here, unless it's a unique course, all of the students here select and pick based on reputation if you are teaching a course and who is teaching it. This is what has always been the case, and it will continue on that. So there's nothing new here. Question from this side.
This is a two-part question. Allison, I think, said something about learning outside the classroom. And I was just wondering, Coursera, and I think Maryland in particular, kind of wedded itself to a particular theory in kind of joining the MOOC group, retrieval theory. I was just wondering, do faculty go through certain trainings or vetting process to teach a MOOC? And then I was wondering if maybe I can see Betsy smiling, so she'll probably have an idea.
There's a MOOC on teaching in a MOOC.
Oh, yeah,
seriously.
It starts in January.
I was wondering about if one of the founding theories, connectivist theory, if you give that any kind of credence at all.
Again, when this started, it was so quick. I had agreed to get advertising videos for these courses done by Labor Day, and faculty weren't on campus. So, and we didn't know. We were the second cohort of universities into the Coursera. So the first ones were still producing. They couldn't really advise us too much yet either. So as we've gone through these first 5 classes, yes, our next focus is to be able to kind of are you interested in teaching a MOOC? And if you are, understand this is what that means, because it's very different in sort of timeline and sequencing. We didn't have that the first time around, and if there's going to be a second time around, we're going to have that, because we have the knowledge now.
What I'm thinking is, you probably wouldn't want like the bad press of Georgia Tech, their professor who dropped out in the middle of the course. So what do you put your faculty through who do want to teach in a MOOC environment?
We went through it with them, really. There was nothing to put them through. We had no context of knowledge to know what to prepare them for. So that's what we can do now. From what we know, we can advise in the beginning when someone says they're interested, what this means from a perspective of working with my instructional designers. Dr. Reen could come in and say, yeah, I really would recommend that you have everything in the can before the first day that you start, because that we have experience to speak to now. And maybe it's better that you actually speak to it, but we just didn't have the knowledge the first time around.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big piece of it is course design. And when you are proposing for Coursera, and at the university level, you're submitting, this is kind of what I want to do, this is how I want to do it, these are some of the tools and technologies engaged in that. I guess I'm a Georgia Tech grad, so I'm sensitive to them kind of getting it wrong. But I credit them for trying something new. If you want to do a Google Hangout with 100 people, it's just not going to work because it doesn't have 100 seats in it. But I think that part is on the university to go through and in the selection of courses, make sure that the design and kind of the articulation of what they want to do makes sense. And then via Coursera is increasingly better online training that they're providing. So I think it's beginning to evolve, and I think there are a couple of fail-safes, if you will, to make sure we don't end up delivering something that doesn't make sense.
That was ultimately my question. Do you tie that course development closely to retrieval theory?
don't know if I can speak to that.
I sure can't. I don't know what retrieval theory is.
Define retrieval theory for us.
Students are engaged to go out, get the information, bring it back to the group, socially build the knowledge. It was in your press release when you joined Coursera.
Yeah.
We can probably thank Brian Voss for that.
But I think the training both at the university level as well as from Coursera is rapidly enhanced and improved. And I think there maybe another round coming up that I expect we'll have a lot more of that embedded with learnings that we already have.
Okay, so I have a question about sustainability, because obviously money has been, even though it may be free to join, you've got IT resources, you've got library resources, you have professors who are teaching these courses. So I'm curious about how you see that going along. Are you going to increase staff, for example, and faculty in libraries and that sort of thing to sustain this as you get more questions from the outside? And even on a very specific note, like Dr. Green, did you give up teaching an in-classroom course or face-to-face course to teach a MOOC? I'm just wondering how I know it's a moving target, but how do you see that playing out?
I guess that's yours.
On the teaching side, we just did more with the same amount of resources. So in that way, what we saw is that we were already teaching in the online environment. We were interested in learning some new methods and models for doing that. And so we saw it as essentially free training that we were going to learn from Coursera by way of being a part of it. And the commitment at that time was that you're going to teach the course once. So it wasn't like you're making a multi-year commitment to teach it a ton of times.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is I don't envision that Maryland is going to have 1,000 Coursera courses. The number is always going to be small. We have a very large faculty, and I work with many faculty. I can tell you that 10% of faculty, if you got a good idea, you can always find faculty to do that. We're really talking about very small numbers, so that piece probably is because of the nature of who we are. Other questions on either side?
Thank you, Edward Bell, Computer Science. I have a question on the student experience side of things. And I did a MOOC on photography before they were called MOOCs years ago. And comments that I've heard from some students, graduate and undergraduate, who've had these online experiences actually mirrored several things that happened in that one that I had done years ago. And I wanted to sort of bounce a few categories. One, people who were in the course watched the video, thought they knew it all, hadn't actually tried or analyzed, and went into the public forums for the peer feedback and said things that were just utterly, utterly wrong and frustrating. And sifting through those to find the actual person who had a clue what they were sharing, right, was a frustrating experience. The people who did their assignments early and shared them became frustrated that after they shared their very creative and innovative thing, 2 or 3 days later, there were 400 other copies that were basically their idea rephrased. And so by the time it got to the end, it looked like theirs was just another in the morass of, yeah, everybody's saying the same thing, when they had said it first and they were quite discouraged. The feedback cycle, lots of people coming in at the last minute, doing their assignments 5 minutes before the deadline, and then other people who were supposed to give comments on those didn't have time because 5 minutes before the deadline they were actually not there, so they didn't even know that there were things there. So their educational experience got harmed by these anonymous others who waited to the last minute. And the final thing was, with all of these things, once things got too hard, since it was online, it was free, there was nothing at the end, they just gave up. When if it was a real course, in their words, they would have stuck it out and pushed themselves harder. And so how do all these things relate to that sort of the student experience we're creating?
From what we're seeing, from watching these courses from behind the scenes, everything you've described can occur, and sometimes it doesn't, and a lot of it depends on who. It's all individual experience. It's also how you structure the course. I am taking a Python programming course right now, and good luck to you if you wait to the last minute, because when you hit print and ask for that statement and it doesn't, and it errors out, you can't bluff your way through that. It does not work. And it is peer assessed, and there's a number of points, and they step you through exactly what you're looking for to assess those points. Whereas that content structures well for that kind of thing. Another course might not structure that same way. So the instructional design really has to stay flexible to the goals of the course. And we work closely with faculty to help try and design these things that will meet what they're trying to do and be fair to students. But the discussion boards, there are answers that thumbs up, thumbs down, and things rank up as people say it's a good answer and down as they're poor. You can report that there's problems with things. We found courses where the students who were actively engaged in discussion boards the first time the course was offered have now been engaged as community TAs, and they are out on those discussion boards to watch for inappropriate things, to answer questions, to stop amok, to stimulate conversation if it needs to happen. So there's been different approaches that have evolved as this grows. Anyone else?
Point. Good instructional design is good instructional design, whether you are teaching face-to-face, fully online, blended, or a MOOC. And there are lots of resources on campus to work with both at TL and at the Center for Teaching Excellence to work on instructional design, thinking about it from both the professor's standpoint and the teacher's standpoint. And I think that's part of what we've seen. And with all of the Coursera courses out there, they've tried, I think, quite hard to have a reasonable bar on it, but they're not all equivalent, but that's true at every institution I know for every course set. Go ahead.
I just want to say, as a student signing up for a Coursera class, what motivates me is myself. It's not like I'm required to take this class, or I have to drag myself to English 101 because I can't move on to the next class. So I think a lot of the Coursera students are self-motivated, are motivated to first of all go to Coursera, sign up, watch the lectures, watch the intro video. I don't think the learning experience has to be face-to-face to engage the students in the what material you're trying to get across. I think the marketing of the class, though, has to kind of capture the student's interest. Like, oh wow, like introduction to irrational behavior. Well, what the heck is that? It's actually behavioral economics. But introduction to irrational behavior sounds more like something I want to take, because I'm irrational and I behave irrationally. So if you had called it behavioral economics, I would have skipped it. So there is a little bit of marketing that goes into this versus when you have a captive audience and a captive student base.
I want to take the last few minutes and shift gears a little bit. I have up on the screen, this was in the Chronicle yesterday. And you'll see, I just put it up because it imparts a nice graphic that begins to capture what has occurred in the last 18 months on that, and the connections from the nonprofit world, from universities, from companies, and VC venture capital. This will, my guess is that this is going to continue to grow. This will not go away. It's too deeply embedded on it. The other comment I'd like to make before I give the panel my final set of questions is, one of the things that we promised, or within the mission of the University of Maryland, but it's in every mission statement I've read from every university, is that we will produce lifelong learners. So maybe now with MOOCs, we will actually have a way of tracking that, because one of the examples of a lifelong learner, or at least I think the people taking those, are exhibiting that trait. And that's not something we've been able to easily track. But my understanding from Daphne and the Coursera people and the edX people, the analytics on this are very big, huge data sets. Everything is known. It's a matter of finding that material and extracting it almost down to keystrokes. So those are issues that we may be able to address in the future, and it's a really interesting question on that. So what I want to do is to have the panel finish up, and then we'll, if there's time, open it up. And my two questions, or it's a two-part question for the people on the panel, is what do MOOCs mean for higher education and society, and what do MOOCs mean for the University of Maryland?
You started that in
Left or right?
I mean, I think that certainly there's a declining trend towards lecture and principle, that you're going to stand up and talk and give a monologue. I think MOOCs may in some way accelerate that. I don't think students are looking to be lectured to. So I don't think that's news to most of us, but I think that you know, if they're just interested in that, then they can find that in a MOOC. And I think the opportunity for higher ed in Maryland both is the experiential learning and the living communities and, you know, being engaged in part of a campus community, which is, you know, something we've been working on for quite some time. But I think it's getting students in labs and it's getting them working together and collaborating and doing projects and doing the types of things that extend beyond just pushing content. And I think the universities that do that well will survive it, and those that don't may not.
What was the question? What was the question again?
The question again, I'll gladly repeat it.
Thank you.
What do MOOCs mean for higher education in society? And then the second part is, what do they mean for the University of Maryland?
Okay. For me, MOOCs remove all the barriers to education that are previously there. Location. You don't have to come to this campus to attend the University of Maryland. Cost is a barrier that's removed by MOOCs. Admissions, having a particular grade coming out of high school, that barrier is removed. Age barriers are removed. And one thing that you may not think of is health barriers. People that cannot physically attend in a classroom or in a wheelchair or in a hospital or in a nursing home. You're now able to reach that audience. So your student base is going to grow. You have to stop thinking about students again as 18 to 22-year-olds, and you know, it's going to become a large audience. And perhaps lifelong learning, you could get some of your alumni back to take some of your classes again. Oh, there's Professor so-and-so. I had him when I was 18. He's still teaching. You know, on a MOOC now. And I can watch him from Japan, you know. Who knows? I mean, you got to think in those respects. And as far as the University of Maryland, I think, or and any university that participates in this forum or medium, it's a way to showcase not only the campus, but the best of the best of what you have to offer. You know, your library resources, your IT resources, your teaching resources, your student resources. It's a way to show the world what University of Maryland is about. So.
I think we had a discussion about this at one point in time, and I equated the MOOC sort of, when I was a kid, you had your tonsils taken out and you were in the hospital 3 days. Now you go in, but you're home by 5 o'clock that same day. And did that mean we needed less doctors, we needed less nurses, we needed less healthcare facilities? No, our technologies improve, our knowledge gets better, our treatments get more specialized, and we see the shift of population in aging, and that there's more healthcare issues, and healthcare hasn't gotten smaller. Doctors haven't had to go away because robots do surgeries. And in some ways there's parallels to MOOCs in higher education. Faculty aren't going away. This does not take the place of the experience that many of our students are having. It's an addition to. And I think it is changing education for something you go and do to something that integrates into your life. Last week, all of my course content I did on the train. So it just becomes, it doesn't become this time you set aside. It's now I have time and I'm going to do this part. Coursera videos are designed, Daphne describes it as you could put a child in the bathtub, go do a video and go back and get the kids. So it's something that just becomes part of your life. They're old enough not old enough to drown, obviously. But,
old enough to make a mess, right?
But it's a commitment of chunks of time to be able to get your education. For UMD specifically, at a very basic level, how much would it have cost the university in a marketing campaign to get this many people to look at University of Maryland? So at a very base level, it's great exposure. But many of us have expertise and knowledge and abilities and skills that in the free market could command so much more than we necessarily earn in higher education. But we're here because it's about providing that education to people. And we just got a tool and we got engaged that is giving this information to some of the most disadvantaged people in the world. And what a great thing. I mean, there are days, I think there was a Friday, I told Betsy I'm MOOC weary. And it just does get to be a lot. It was so much, so fast. But at the end of the day, what a great thing to participate in. What an opportunity.
And I'll pick up on the social justice aspect. I think from the perspective of the library and librarians, we're very interested in emphasizing open access as much as we can. And I think this really drives home the point that in this environment we need to push for open access materials and to have resources that are available without going through commercial publishers and dealing with all of the inflation and the cost of doing that. So my hope is, in addition to just broadening the educational, is that this will also help us broaden and expand the open initiative movement and to raise awareness of that. I think more specifically for higher ed and for Maryland, I see the MOOC as an opportunity to really change a little bit of the ways that we do some of our courses. I think MOOCs can be used to provide some of that introductory baseline kind of learning and knowledge that sometimes happens in the classroom. And if we can move that to an online environment and then use the class time for the more valuable interaction and the more valuable collaborative kinds of learning, I think it can really give us much more of an enhanced learning experience for our students. I also think we talk about lifelong learning, and I do see that as a real advantage. And I see, it's a low-cost way, it's a no damage way of really doing some exploration, thinking about some other areas that you might be interested in. And I also, and Allison alluded to this, is and I've been thinking about this, are applications for workforce development. So can we use the MOOC environment to provide ongoing training for people in the workforce without going out and sending people to expensive courses or bringing in speakers and trainers and all of that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that we can look at those kind of applications as well.
It's going to be hard to add much to this, but this is great. I keep looking at my colleague in the front row there, Joe. I'm looking at you. Who's an award-winning education researcher, and for probably well over a decade has been able to demonstrate, as there are many in the community of education research, that lecturing to students isn't the best way for students to learn. And yet we still lecture, a lot of us. This movement has been very disruptive, and what we've already seen is we have to now justify our existence as educators. We have to make sure that we understand why it is that face-to-face instruction is so important. And so now we get a chance to really focus on that, because there's something else out there that's going to cause us to think about that. And for me, that's one of the really exciting things that's been happening, is how much conversation across campus this has now stimulated about how students learn, how can we do better, can we make use of, is technology now maybe getting to a point where we can really make use of it to improve student learning. So that's what I think it has to do for higher education and also for the campus.
We're almost at time. When I think of this, I think what it provides for all three of those is new sets of opportunities. And those opportunities, you got to kind of think outside the box. So one example is the fact that we have almost 70 people in this room. And I can tell you, getting 70 faculty, or a majority of faculty, come and sit for 2 hours to talk about teaching and learning, try that elsewhere. So this is an opportunity, and so it's moving the conversations that we need to have about education out from behind closed doors. It also, I think, is demonstrating a paradigm shift that's occurring in education process. And we're moving, because of technology, from solely text-based, flat things on paper to video. And the power of video for learning is well documented on that piece. It's a very powerful learning tool. And for Maryland, I'll give you a story. One of my graduate students in my graduate course on teaching and learning, we were talking about MOOCs, and she said, I think they're great. I was taking this course and I was really struggling with it, and I just went online and I found a MOOC, and I covered basically the same material, and in 2 weeks I was back up to speed, and it presented in a way that worked for me. That was not an implication that the course as taught was bad. It just didn't work for her on that piece. And that's the opportunity, again, for our students. For those students where the course you're teaching is working for 95%, but that 5% of students is not working for, that's an opportunity for them to go out and perhaps find a slightly different way of seeing that material. We have approximately 3 or 4 minutes left, so I'm going to open it up to any final comments or questions from the participants.
I wanted to ask, I know things are just beginning, but has there been any discussion about how that can work with our school districts? What can we do to help those students who are not interested in school and getting them to move on through the educational process?
I'll say I think there has been conversation. I don't know that we know where to go with that yet. Look in the paper tomorrow. I think there'll be an announcement coming out from Coursera about teacher preparation. I don't think I can say anything more about it because it's embargoed, but there's that conversation. There's also the conversation. Another example on campus that's going on is doing a comparison between a face-to-face instruction and a very common course material, statistics course material. Those kinds of comparisons could ultimately be the kinds of things that would reach down to better preparation for students before they get to our campus. But it's pretty early still.
I think it's pretty early, but there's some, at least in the STEM disciplines, there's a number of things on the immediate horizon, one of which is the new science standards piece and the need for retraining science STEM teachers. And I think this type of approach is probably going to accelerate up quite quickly on it. Other questions or comments? We have time for about 1 or 2. Got it.
I know it's happening across campus in certain areas, the business schools certainly, and IT, and the alliances that are built with the professional communities, the corporations, and in this instance, the production professionals that are out there. What are your thoughts on enhancing those relationships with the groups, organizations, and people who have already engaged in media studies and the broadcast standards, and so that a lot of this has already been solved? And might you look to them and new relationships outside the traditional walls of the university to enhance the quality and branding of what you are putting forth through MOOC?
Yeah, I said journalism. In general, my approach, there are so many resources on a university, or somebody has a connection to someone, that anytime you can tap into that, that is a very positive thing. And so we're seeing that kind of thing around MOOC. Gary and I have been working together very closely on some synergies we have in things that we do. So in general, I'm always looking towards those partnerships. I don't need to reinvent the wheel.
One of the things that we try to do at CTE is actually end on time, although, and we did start on time because we scheduled you 15 minutes. So I want to thank all of you for coming. I'd like you to thank the panel for